From a transmitter atop Great Blue Hill, this is WGBH, live, local talk, Boston Public Radio.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. This is hour 2 of a special 3-hour edition of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 WGBH. You're holding up well, Jim?
I am so far. It's been a tough day, but I think I'm big enough to be able to make it.
That's good.
You know, yesterday, if you read the paper or watched the news, top police officials and activists gathered at the State House for a rally. Joining us on the line to explain what happened on Beacon Hill to draw this concerned crowd is Boston Police Commissioner William Evans. Commissioner, it's good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
For having me on, Jim.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner Evans. So it is unusual, as Jim just said. You rarely see a picture of all these police chiefs up there on the steps on Beacon Hill. What was the issue that brought you up there?
Well, it was an issue with the new gun legislation. I think, a couple of weeks ago, the Speaker put forward with the House, some new gun legislation, and we were very happy with that. And then when it went to the Senate, we had certain language that we weren't very happy with because it basically took out a lot of the discretion in the suitability clause where us as police chiefs, if we know some reasons to deny someone an FID card, which an FID card allows people to purchase shotguns and rifles and have them in their homes, a lot of times we know background information on people that, whether they've been involved in domestic incidents or, some mental issues, based on the totality of circumstances, sometimes we can say denied. And if we don't get this legislation in, then, people can go down and we have no say in them getting an FID card. So I think it's an important public safety issue, especially here in the city where we're continually, myself and Mayor Walsh, trying to fight the flow of guns into the city of Boston.
So we're talking to Boston Police Commissioner William Evans. So the deal is now that police chiefs around the Commonwealth can say no to an FID card for a handgun, and you wanted that to extend to saying no for shotguns and rifles, and the Senate has denied you that.
Yeah, right now, they took out the suitability, and we always had that. So, unfortunately, and I remember being a captain once when a mother called me and informed me that her son, who had some issues, was going down to apply for a license to either carry a firearm or an FID card, and she asked me to try to stop that, and I remember doing that. So, so we have access. A lot of people do not have criminal records, obviously, but there's other issues going on in their lives that we're aware of. And based on the knowledge we have, I think we should be able to determine the suitability of who should possess a gun, especially here in the city, Marjorie, where that's been our number one priority, to basically take as many guns off the street as well as make sure the right people possess them.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, Commissioner Evans, I had to read the Globe story twice because I was a little incredulous that this could have happened. And by the way, the vote was 28-10. It was overwhelming in a democratically controlled state Senate. So essentially, you were just looking, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, for the exact same power as a police chief over rifles and shotguns that you already have over handguns. Is that not right? You're not asking for anything extraordinary, just that same right extended to those kinds of weapons. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what was the argument? What is, when you talk to individual legislators, what is that? I mean, we read one guy said, Senator Timilty, who's chair of the key committee, said he was worried it violated the Constitution. Well, I'm not much of a lawyer, but I would argue if what you wanted violates the Constitution, so does the provision about handguns. So he can't have one and not have the other. What's the real reason? Did they cave to the NRA or Gun Owners Action League? What's going on here?
Yeah, I don't really understand, Jim, and I don't really want to get into the politics of what might have happened. All I know is, every day our officers are doing a great job to try to make the city safe and to get as many guns off the street. So far this year, we've taken, 59 shotguns and rifles that have been illegally possessed off the street. We've taken about 730 handguns off the street. So I just know not having that suitability and just handing out guns to anyone who maybe doesn't have a criminal record is not the answer. So I don't know why this legislation is different, but quite frankly, I know there's a lot of great people on the Senate. I just hope they reconsider, and especially for issues such as Mayor Walsh takes so seriously, and that's stopping people getting guns that don't deserve to have them.
We're talking with Boston Police Commissioner Evans. One of the things, I suspect, and you would know better than I do, Commissioner, this isn't so much of a big deal in the bigger cities like the Bostons and the Springfields and the Worcesters, but you hear this a lot in the suburbs and the smaller towns, and it's exactly what Jim Wallace, who runs the Gun Owners Action League, complained about, that police chiefs in smaller towns abuse their power by not giving licenses for handguns to people who deserve them. He says that's a legitimate criticism.
Yeah, and it could be true in a small town, but there has to be restrictions because, people should have a legitimate reason for possessing them. And my problem here in the city is quite frequently we might have a house break and a legitimate person who possesses them has them stolen, and then they go out into the hands of people who are going to use them for the wrong reason. So, based on what we do here, we screen everyone to make sure, they haven't been involved in where they have a 209 restraining order against their stuff like that. And, I know people like to hunt, and I know people like to use them in sport, but, in the wrong hands, these guns can go out. And we've seen that. And when I was on your show, I talked about the impact of seeing that 9-year-old in Mattapan shot by a gun that was laying around the house by his 14-year-old brother. Yeah. And that's the type of stuff myself and Mayor Walsh are trying to prevent by having guns in homes, just hanging around where they can get into the wrong hands.
You mentioned hunting and recreation, that sort of thing. We're talking to Boston Police Commissioner Bill Evans. Stan Rosenberg, who is a state senator from Western Massachusetts, he will be the new Senate president as soon as the term ends. Terry Murray is stepping down, or I guess she's term limited or something. Here's a quote in the Globe from Senator Rosenberg. A lot of members, meaning of the 28th, who voted against what you wanted, Commissioner Evans, a lot of members felt that since the focus of that was on long guns, which is basically what people use for recreation and sport, there were sufficient controls through the federal criteria, and therefore it was not necessary. How do you respond to what Rosenberg said, Commissioner?
Well, I don't agree with that, Jim. I mean, having long guns and rifles and shotguns, especially here in the city of Boston, I think we should have, as the local authorities, some say in the matter. And, the federal doesn't really allow us to have the discretion that we want in these particular cases. So, like I said before, we've had 59 already shotguns and rifles taken off people who have possessed them illegally, Jim. And I just hate to see where we make it easier for more people to get access to these weapons in the city of Boston, because for the most part, nobody in the city needs a shotgun. Nobody needs a rifle. And I don't know a lot of people who are into hunting, who, being a lifelong resident, would actually want that, who lives in the city. But especially in the city, I want to have discretion over who's getting any type of gun, because public safety is my main concern. And as you know, it's an uphill battle taking as many guns off the street right now without pumping more into the system.
One of your colleagues from Wellesley, and it's not exactly a crime capital out there, Terry Cunningham, is the police chief, is quoted in the Globe. He was part of your event yesterday morning. Are people really going to be any less dead if they're killed with a rifle or a shotgun than a handgun? And I'd say that sort of sums it up. A couple of last things, Commissioner Evans. Obviously, this is an issue that matters a lot to people who do what you do for a living. Do legislators who represent, for example, Boston, or in the case of Wellesley, whoever represents Wellesley in the Senate, do they reach out to the police chiefs prior to this vote and say, we'd like your input? Or essentially, were they voting on this and then you guys heard about the turn that troubled you and you rushed up to Beacon Hill with John Rosenthal, who we know from the handgun organization? Is that what happened? Did they reach out to you, or you just responded to what you heard was happening there?
Well, in this particular, I think probably, most of my legislators living in the city, Jim, were very much on board.
Yeah.
They realize the violence and the efforts we're combining. I can't speak for the other chiefs and the legislators, But I know, all of us here in the city are very concerned about handgun violence and the need to get them off. So I've always had the support of the delegation, the Boston delegation here. But the problem is, I think, as you know, gun violence impacts, and you mentioned earlier, the major cities, whether it's the Springfield, the Brockton. So we obviously have a lot more at stake to make sure that the suitability clause is put back in. And, I hope both the Senate, who I have the utmost respect for, and the House can work together to get that language back in there.
And by the way, we should say that, so this is not just a sorry tale to finish the thought that Commissioner Evans had. This now goes to a conference committee. The House version includes the provision that the police chiefs, including Evans, wants. The Senate version does not. Six of the senators who voted to remove the provision that Commissioner Evans and the others want have already proposed new language. So if you care about this issue, call your legislator, whether he or she is a senator or a state rep, and tell them what you think, and you have a decent ability to affect the ultimate outcome here.
Commissioner Evans, as you were speaking about hunters, maybe it's a gross generalization, but when I think of people who like to hunt, I think of them in the rural areas. I mean, I don't know that many people who live in the Back Bay or Dorchester or even Jamaica Plain that are hunting on the weekends. I don't know. Maybe I'm hanging around with the wrong crowd. Do you know many locals that are big into hunting, Commissioner Evans? Maybe you do.
No, I'm a lifelong South Boston resident, and I'm not a big gun nut myself, to tell you the truth. We grew up and I didn't know a lot of people, to tell you the truth, who did it. So I think this is not so much a city issue.
Yeah.
Why I say I don't know many people who want to go out and buy a shotgun. I never knew anyone growing up with and wanted rifles in their home. So that's why it's so important, at least in the city, to stop these guns from being in people's closets.
Yeah.
And because, unfortunately, sometimes these guns end up in the wrong hands. A child can get them. And so, this is a very important issue for me and the mayor. And again, knock on wood, and I hate to jinx this, we've had a pretty good summer with the violence after having a rough start in January and February, and we hope to continue attacking the gun issue and bringing down the violence so we don't have any more kids shot in the city this year.
Commissioner Evans, so do we. Thanks for sharing the message with us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Marjorie and Jim.
Thank you very much. That was the voice of Boston Police Commissioner Bill Evans.